Mom said my sister needed a perfect wedding with my college money. She didn't expect my reply. The text message arrived at 3:15 p.m. on a Thursday, while I was between patient rounds at St. Mary's Medical Center in Denver. I had just finished explaining a complex neurological procedure to an anxious family when my phone buzzed with what would become the most expensive misunderstanding of my mother's life. "Lauren, honey, I need to tell you something about your college fund. Your sister Amber's wedding is costing more than we planned, and we've decided to use the money we saved for your education. Amber needs this day to be magical, and honestly, you've always been better with money than she has. I know you'll understand. Love, Mom." I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. My parents were planning to use my college fund, money that had been untouched for nearly a decade, to pay for my sister's wedding. What made this particularly amusing was that I'd graduated from Johns Hopkins Medical School 4 years ago without borrowing a single penny, thanks to the mobile app patents I developed during my computer science double major at Stanford. The college fund Mom was referring to had been irrelevant to my education since I was 23 years old. I texted back, "I want Amber to be happy too. Whatever makes her wedding day special." Mom responded immediately, "Thank you for being so understanding, sweetheart. I knew you'd see the big picture. This wedding is going to be featured in Denver Bride magazine. Amber is over the moon." What Mom didn't know was that the big picture included the fact that I'd been quietly funding my own medical residency and living expenses through licensing fees from 4 mobile applications I developed. The apps, focusing on medical scheduling, patient communication, and hospital resource management, had been generating substantial royalty payments for years. My family knew I'd done some programming in college, but they assumed it was just a side hobby that helped me pay for textbooks and coffee. They had no idea that TechFlow Innovations, my software development company, held patents on systems now used in over 600 hospitals across North America. That evening, I called my financial advisor, Patricia Williams, to discuss some portfolio adjustments. "Patricia, I need to ask you about something personal." "What's on your mind, Lauren?" "My parents just informed me they're using my old college fund for my sister's wedding. I'm curious about the current value of that account." "Let me pull up your family's information." "Lauren, are you asking about the education fund your parents opened when you were born?" "That's the one." According to my records, that account has grown to approximately $142,000 over the years. Your parents have been making regular contributions even after you graduated medical school. I paused. "They've been continuing to contribute?" "Yes, quite substantially. It looks like they've been treating it as a general family education fund, for potential graduate school, future grandchildren's education, continuing medical education for you, that sort of thing." "And they're planning to withdraw all of it?" "That's what the paperwork indicates." "Lauren, is everything all right with your family's finances?" "I think they're just prioritizing Amber's wedding. You know how these things can get expensive." What I didn't mention to Patricia was that Amber's wedding had already spiraled into a $195,000 extravaganza. The college fund would barely cover the venue and catering costs. Saturday evening, I joined the family for dinner at our childhood home in Lakewood, Colorado. Amber was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement as she displayed wedding planning binders, fabric samples, and vendor contracts across the dining room table. "Lauren, wait until you see the photos from our venue tour." Amber gushed, pulling out her phone. "The Grand Vista Resort is absolutely breathtaking. It's like something from a Disney movie." "It looks stunning," I said, admiring the photos of mountain views and an elegant reception hall. "And expensive," Dad added with a somewhat strained smile. "But our Amber deserves nothing but the best." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "We've been saving for this day since she was little. Every girl deserves her dream wedding." "Speaking of saving," Amber turned to me, "Mom told me you were okay with us using your college money. That's so generous of you, Lauren. I promise I'll pay you back somehow. Maybe when Derek gets that promotion he's hoping for." Derek, Amber's fiancé, was a genuinely nice guy who worked in digital marketing for a mid-sized advertising agency. His potential promotion would bump his salary from $58,000 to maybe $72,000, hardly enough to repay a 6-figure wedding fund. "Amber, don't worry about paying me back. Just focus on enjoying your engagement." Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, girls, we should discuss the budget details. Even with Lauren's college fund, we're going to be stretched pretty thin. He pulled out a notebook filled with calculations. The venue is $52,000. Catering is $41,000. Flowers are $14,000. Photography is $9,500. The dress was $3,200. Dad, I interrupted gently, how much is the wedding costing total? After everything, music, transportation, rehearsal dinner, cake, invitations, we're looking at about $195,000. And you're using my college fund to cover how much of that? The fund will cover about $142,000. Your mother and I are taking out a home equity loan for the rest. I felt my stomach drop. You're mortgaging the house? It's not a big deal, Mom said quickly. We have plenty of equity, and the payments are manageable. Besides, this is Amber's one chance to have the wedding of her dreams. What about your retirement plans? We'll figure it out. Family comes first. That night, I lay awake thinking about my parents' financial situation. At 59 and 62, they should be maximizing their retirement savings, not taking on new debt for a wedding. Dad was a high school vice principal, and Mom worked part-time as a dental hygienist. Their combined income was maybe $92,000 a year. Meanwhile, my licensing fees from TechFlow Innovations had generated over $2.8 million in the past 4 years alone. I was earning more monthly than my parents made annually. But they had no idea because I'd never found the right way to tell them about my business success. To them, I was just Dr. Lauren, who worked long hours at the hospital and lived modestly in a small apartment near downtown Denver. They assumed my resident physician salary was my only income, completely unaware that I owned intellectual property that was revolutionizing healthcare technology across the country. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Sunday morning, I decided to visit Amber at her apartment in Cherry Creek to understand her true feelings about this expensive wedding. I found her addressing save-the-date cards at her kitchen table, surrounded by wedding planning chaos that looked like a craft store had exploded. Amber, can I ask you something personal? Sure, she said, not looking up from her calligraphy. What's up? Is this wedding what you really want, or is it what you think you should want? She looked surprised, her pen hovering over an envelope. What do you mean? I mean $195,000 is a tremendous amount of money. Are you comfortable with Mom and Dad going into debt for your wedding day? Lauren, every bride deserves one perfect day. Mom has been planning my wedding since I was in middle school. She's honestly more excited about this than I am. But what do you want? If money weren't a factor, what would your ideal wedding look like? Amber was quiet for a long moment, setting down her pen. You know what? I'd probably want something much smaller, more intimate. Derek and I actually talked about eloping to Tuscany, but Mom cried when we mentioned it. You wanted to elope? We wanted to spend our money on a house down payment and an amazing honeymoon to Europe, but Mom said a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event that brings families together. She said I'd regret not having a proper wedding. And now you're having the wedding Mom wants instead of the wedding you want? I guess so. But Lauren, I can't break her heart. She's been dreaming about this day for years. She has Pinterest boards going back to 2015. I understood then that this wasn't really Amber's wedding, it was Mom's grand production with Amber as the reluctant star performer. Monday morning, I called the Grand Vista Resort to inquire about their payment policies. Good morning, this is Dr. Lauren Mitchell. My sister Amber is having her wedding at your venue in September. Oh yes, the Mitchell-Rodriguez wedding. How can I help you today? I wanted to confirm the payment schedule for the event. Let me pull up the contract. We have a $18,000 deposit already paid, and the remaining $34,000 is due 30 days before the event. If the payment doesn't go through, we would need to discuss alternative arrangements or potentially cancel the booking. I see. Thank you for the information. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change my family's life forever. I called my attorney, David Thompson, who handled my intellectual property and business affairs. David, I need to set up a family trust with some very specific parameters. What kind of trust are you considering? I want to create an education and family milestone foundation. It should be able to cover educational expenses, weddings, home purchases, Major life events for family members. What's the initial funding amount you're thinking? Let's start with $600,000. Lauren, that's a substantial trust. What's prompting this decision? I explained the situation with Amber's wedding and my parents' financial sacrifice. So you want to help with the wedding costs without your family knowing the money is coming from you? I want to help in a way that doesn't change how they see me or treat me. If they suddenly discover I'm worth millions, it might complicate our relationships forever. 2 weeks later, everything was in place. The Mitchell Family Foundation was established as a legitimate charitable trust focused on supporting educational and life milestone expenses for qualifying family members. I had worked with David to create detailed documentation that would make it appear completely independent and professionally managed. On Thursday evening, Mom called me in tears. Lauren, I don't know what we're going to do. What's wrong, Mom? The wedding venue called today. They need the final payment next week, but the home equity loan paperwork is taking longer than expected. The bank says it might be another 6 weeks before the funds are available. Have you talked to Amber about adjusting the timeline? Amber is devastated. The invitations are already mailed. The dress is being altered. The photographer is booked. The flowers are ordered. We can't postpone everything now. What about using the college fund money? We already spent most of that on the deposit and other vendors. Lauren, I'm terrified we're going to have to cancel the wedding. Amber will be heartbroken. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Mom, what if I told you there might be another option? What kind of option? Well, I've been doing some research, and there are actually foundations that provide grants for family milestone events, educational funds that have expanded their mission to include weddings, home purchases, things like that. That sounds too good to be true, honey. It's worth looking into. Let me make some calls tomorrow and see what I can find out. Friday afternoon, I called Mom back with carefully orchestrated good news. Mom, you're not going to believe this, but I found something incredible. What did you find? There's a foundation called the Mitchell Family Foundation. I know, crazy coincidence with our name, and they provide grants for educational expenses and major family milestones. How did you find out about this? I asked some colleagues at the hospital about emergency funding options, and one of the attending physicians mentioned this foundation. Apparently, they've helped several medical families with wedding expenses when traditional financing fell through. How much could they potentially provide? I filled out a preliminary application, and they indicated they could potentially cover the entire remaining wedding cost, plus additional funds for honeymoon expenses. Mom was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Mom, are you there? Lauren, are you telling me there's a foundation that might pay for Amber's entire wedding? That's exactly what it looks like. The foundation focuses on families who have demonstrated financial responsibility and have legitimate educational or milestone funding needs. What do we need to do? I already submitted the initial paperwork. They'll need some financial documents from you and Dad, and they want to verify the wedding expenses, but the foundation representative seemed very optimistic about our application. This is a miracle, Lauren. An absolute miracle. It really might be, Mom. Over the weekend, I worked with David to expedite the grant approval process through official channels. By Monday morning, everything was ready. The foundation would cover the remaining $67,000 in wedding expenses, plus provide an additional $28,000 for the honeymoon and miscellaneous costs Amber and Derek hadn't budgeted for. Monday evening, Mom called me crying tears of joy. Lauren, the foundation approved our application. They're paying for everything, the venue, the remaining catering costs, even Amber's honeymoon to Italy. That's incredible, Mom. The woman from the foundation said our family demonstrated exactly the kind of financial responsibility and educational values they want to support. She mentioned that having a daughter who went to medical school was a significant factor in their decision. I smiled. Well, I'm glad my education could help Amber in some way. Lauren, this means we don't have to take out the home equity loan. We don't have to touch your college fund. The foundation is covering everything, and Amber gets her dream wedding. She gets her dream wedding, and our family doesn't go into debt. I can't believe how lucky we are. That evening, the whole family gathered at Mom and Dad's house to celebrate the miraculous funding. Amber was ecstatic, Derek was relieved, and my parents looked 10 years younger without the financial stress hanging over them. "I still can't believe this foundation exists," Dad said, shaking his head in amazement. "The woman I spoke with said they've been operating quietly for several years," I explained. "They don't advertise because they want to help families who are genuinely in need, not people just looking for free money." "What kind of requirements did they have?" Amber asked curiously. "Educational achievement, financial responsibility, family stability." Dad being a vice principal for 15 years and Mom's work in healthcare were big factors. Plus, my medical degree and Derek's steady employment history. It's like they were looking for families exactly like ours. "Sometimes things just work out perfectly," Mom mused. "Sometimes they do," I agreed. The wedding took place on a perfect September day in the Colorado Rockies. Amber looked absolutely radiant in her designer gown. The venue was everything she had dreamed of, and the celebration was genuinely joyful without the undercurrent of financial stress that had been building for months. During her maid of honor speech, Amber thanked our parents for their sacrifice and mentioned the miraculous foundation that had made everything possible. "Sometimes," she said, "angels appear in the most unexpected forms. Our family was blessed by strangers who believed in us and supported our happiness." If only she knew how close to home that angel actually lived. The reception was magical. Derek's best man gave a hilarious speech about their college adventures. Dad danced with Amber to butterfly kisses, without a care in the world about mortgage payments. Mom glowed with pride as she watched her vision come to life perfectly. I danced with my new brother-in-law and watched my sister beam with happiness, knowing that her joy wasn't tainted by family financial stress. The $195,000 wedding was everything Mom had dreamed it would be, and more importantly, it was everything Amber deserved, even if she would have been just as happy with something simpler. As I watched the fairy lights twinkle over the dance floor and listened to the mountain breeze rustling through the aspen trees, I realized that the most valuable thing about wealth wasn't the money itself. It was the freedom to help people you love without them feeling diminished by that help. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones people think come from strangers. 6 months later, I finally found the perfect moment to tell my family about TechFlow innovations. We were having Sunday brunch at Mom and Dad's house, and Dad was discussing a new software system the school district was considering for scheduling and student management. "It's called TechFlow Solutions," he said. "Originally designed for hospitals, but apparently it works brilliantly for educational scheduling too." "I've heard of that company," I said carefully. "The principal at Roosevelt High says it's completely revolutionized how they handle staff scheduling and student appointments. Makes me wish I understood technology better." "Dad, what if I told you I could give you a personal demonstration of how it works?" "You know about this software?" "Actually, I developed it." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "You what?" Mom asked, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. "I created TechFlow Solutions during my final year at Stanford. The software you're describing, I wrote every line of code." "Lauren," Amber said slowly, "are you saying you own that company?" "I own the patents and licensing rights." "Yes." Dad stared at me. "Sweetheart, how much money does this software generate?" "Enough to live very comfortably." "Enough to live comfortably, or enough to fund wedding foundations?" I looked around the table at my family, all of them staring at me with growing understanding and amazement. "Amber, do you remember how grateful you were to that mysterious foundation that paid for your wedding?" "Of course. It was the most generous gift our family has ever received." "What if I told you that gift came from someone who loves you and wanted your wedding day to be absolutely perfect?" Amber's eyes widened as realization dawned. "Lauren, was that you?" The Mitchell Family Foundation is completely real, and it will continue to help our family with major life expenses. But yes, the funding comes from my software licensing fees. Mom started crying. "You paid for Amber's wedding." "I paid for Amber's happiness, and for Dad's ability to retire without debt, and for the peace of mind that comes from knowing our family doesn't have to choose between dreams and financial security." "But why didn't you just tell us you had the money?" Dad asked, clearly emotional. "Because I wanted Amber's wedding to be about celebrating her marriage, not about my bank account. I wanted you and Mom to feel proud of providing for your daughter, not indebted to me." "Lauren," Amber whispered, "how much money do you actually have?" "Enough to take care of all of us for the rest of our lives." The conversation that followed lasted 4 hours. They learned about the patents, the licensing deals, the investment portfolio that had grown from software royalties. I learned about their fears that they hadn't provided enough for their daughters, their pride in my medical career, and their complete amazement that I'd built a technology empire alongside becoming a doctor. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Mom asked. "Because I needed you to love me for who I am, not what I've accomplished. I needed to know that your support was unconditional." "Our support has always been unconditional," Dad said firmly. "I know that now, but I needed to be absolutely sure." Over the following months, our family dynamics shifted in subtle but profound ways. My parents stopped worrying about retirement and started planning the European river cruise they dreamed about for 20 years. Amber and Derek used foundation funding to buy their first home, a beautiful craftsman-style house in Boulder with mountain views. Dad implemented TechFlow solutions at his school district and became the region's unofficial technology advocate, speaking at education conferences about innovation in school management. Mom finally quit her part-time job and started volunteering at a free clinic, using her dental hygiene skills to help underserved communities. But the most important change was that my family finally saw me as I really was. Not just Dr. Lauren who worked exhausting hospital shifts, but Dr. Lauren who had built something extraordinary while pursuing her passion for medicine. The college fund Mom had worried about became the seed money for an expanded foundation that would eventually help cousins, future grandchildren, and family members not yet born. "Lauren," Mom said during one of our weekly phone calls, "I need to apologize." "For what?" "For assuming you needed that college money more than Amber needed her wedding. I should have realized that our brilliant daughter who went to Johns Hopkins Medical School probably had her finances figured out." "Mom, you couldn't have known about the software business." "But I could have asked about your life instead of making assumptions. I could have trusted that you'd built something stable for yourself." "You can ask now." "I can ask now," she agreed with a laugh. "So tell me, what are you working on next?" As I described my latest software project, a patient care coordination system that could revolutionize hospital efficiency nationwide, I realized that the most valuable aspect of wealth wasn't the money itself. It was the freedom to help people you love without them feeling diminished by that help. Emma got her fairy tale wedding. My parents got their financial security. Derek got his dream house. And I got the satisfaction of providing all of it without anyone feeling like charity cases. The Mitchell Family Foundation continues to operate quietly, supporting educational goals and life milestones for people who deserve good things but might not otherwise be able to afford them. We've helped 3 cousins with college tuition, funded Derek's MBA program, and even supported a family friend's medical emergency. Sometimes late at night when I'm working on new software innovations in my home office, I think about that text message from Mom about using my college fund. She was absolutely right that Amber deserved a perfect wedding day. She just never imagined that her other daughter had already ensured it would be perfect, with or without that old college fund. The best part? Last month, Amber and Derek announced they're expecting their first child. The Mitchell Family Foundation is already preparing an education fund for my future niece or nephew. Some traditions are worth continuing, especially when you have the power to make dreams come true. And sometimes, the most successful business ventures are the ones that let you take care of family without them ever having to know they needed taking care of.